Hi everyone. We're back for this season, the VA to VA with Tammy and Lisa, Durden and Lisa Kolb. Tammy is joining us soon. I think she has a little technical difficulties, but that doesn't change with technology. Hi, I'm Nanette Telemac with In Essence Virtual Assistants, and I am a virtual assistant, hopefully planning on becoming a multi VA working in the New Hampshire area. And I'm going to let Lisa introduce herself.
Hey everyone, I'm Lisa Cole with Augusta Virtual Assistants. At the moment, I'm watching my 22-month-old granddaughter, so you may hear some toy noise in the background, or you may see me turn away from the camera to pay attention to her during our broadcast today. But I am here, and it's just one of the joys of being a virtual assistant that you can spend time with extended members of your family. And welcome for joining us, our first broadcast since we took summer break, and we have a lot to talk about. And as Nanette said, Tammy will be joining us in a few moments.
Right. And today's subject, I guess we should get into we would like to talk about the larger VA companies, and the topic is, does size matter and can we compete with them? And we know that there's a lot of them out there. They get a lot of reviews, and people talk about them on entrepreneur online sites and Inc. They talk about their what they offer and how to work with them. And not too many times do we as smaller companies get that kind of play and people looking at us and what we offer. So we just wanted to discuss the differences between us and them, and the pros and cons, and go over a case study. I know most of you have all heard of what happened to Zirtual over the summer, where they just closed down suddenly, leaving their customers as well as their employees in the lurch. And we're going to talk about that as well. With that said, I should go into the research that we have done, and our goal is to help all of you structure a successful team. And we thought by talking about these small companies, we're able to give you some of the differences that the smaller companies have to the larger, like I said before. And I think some of the companies that we did some research, and some of the companies that come up you may have heard of, the VA companies that we looked at were we broke them down into categories. And the reason why we did is we realized there's a lot out there, and a lot of them are broken down into certain categories. You have your large VA companies like Worldwide 101, EA Help, Zirtual, which falls into a lot of the different categories, but they're considered large. Time Inc., ETC, and You Assist Me is some of the few that are really big. The differences with them is that most of them provide outsourcing services, and most are located internationally, like in India, Philippines, and some have U.S. offices as well. What we find with the larger ones is that they tend to, some of them have keep their employees as subcontractors. A lot of them are hiring. They hire you and pay you a salary. The next category is virtual employees. And what we mean by that is that they work remotely for a third-party company. So businesses are essentially buying the services from that virtual employee company. And examples of that will be Virtual Employee, 123 Employee, and HYVA. It's the name of that company. And they typically, they sell services out to people. The next category of virtual assistants is task-based virtual assistants, like Fancy Hands, Red Butler, Hablease, and TaskRabbit. And these task-based VAs are great for handling quick one-off assignments like appointment settings, online research. Although all of them do that, some of them may do social media, whatever. But these task-based or one-offs, normally um, they're sold as monthly subscription services with a set of requests. Um, and they're also overseas as well as the United States. Um, the next one is project-based virtual assistants. Um, these are also one-offs, but they're typically the places where that are considered project-based is like Upwork, Fiverr, Guru, Freelance. You know, I think most of us, or some of us, I know I have gone on these sites and signed up and tried to find work. I find them very competitive. A lot of times the customers are looking for, someone cheap to do something I think is sometimes not so easy. But you can go on there for logo design and some program work for a website and things of that nature. And then the next category we have is freelance virtual assistants, which basically is what we do. I think I consider myself a freelance virtual assistant company. We're professionals with corporate and industry skill sets in administration, marketing, sales, consultative, or technology. And we work independently, or we work with subcontractors on specific tasks or projects, but they can be short-term or as well as long-term. And but there are other companies like that called Workaholic for Hire and Hourly Nerd, and then I would consider Tammy's business, Tammy Solutions, and Lisa's business is under that category. And then there's niche VA service companies, and I consider myself a generalist as well, and I think Tammy and Lisa probably do too. But the niche services could be design service companies, writing services that provide writing skills, copywriting, and phone support services. Places like CrowdSpring, Copywriter Today, things like that. So those are the categories that we researched and found, broken down in that way. And the structure of most of these companies, they really vary. We find that, like I said, they either hire you as an employee, or they subcontract you. Most of them are hiring people. And so let's see, so those are the categories that I have. And we did a case study of one of these, and that's Zirtual. We all know what happened to Zirtual. Zirtual hires their people, their employees, and so what happened with them is that they kind of, they started growing pretty fast. And from what we researched with them is that first of all, let's give an overview of Zirtual. Their service provides a virtual assistant who handles and schedules, arranges phone calls, keeps tabs, does concierge work. They can help you with social media management. What they were doing is their premise is that they are intended to help with busy entrepreneurs. And the founder, Mary Kate Donovan, started the company in 2010. And then typically the way their pricing structure works for their customers is they have an entrepreneur plan starting at $399 for up to 16 hours of work. They have an executive plan starting at $749 for up to 32 hours of work. And then they have a VIP plan, which is $1,199 up to 55 hours of work. What I found very interesting is that they're what they call ZAs, or virtual assistants, only earn about $11 to $15 an hour. And so, and the reason why is because they have, their structure is they hire their virtual assistants. They hire them and they have to train them. They have overhead for insurance, tax, employment tax. They have health benefits. I mean, that makes them their whole model a little different from what a virtual assistant model has always been, and what we promote to our customers, which is we save you that overhead expense but they have taken it on themselves, and what that caused for them is an overnight implosion, where they lost. They had to shut down. They couldn't drum up the money, and the money that they did drum up didn't cover the cost. They had a lot of debt, and and wound up having to let go 400 employees because they ballooned so quickly. And so that's, I would think, a lesson to all of us as we try to grow our business. When we think about structuring our business, what do we want? What are we trying to do, and what do we want to become like a Zirtual? And it begs the question. I mean, we really need to think about this and for myself, I need to think about this when I'm building a multimedia, a multi VA company. In that, I how fast do I want to grow? What do I need to watch out for? And I know that I want a subcontract. I don't want employees. I don't want that problem that Zirtual had. I think that for all of us, when we're designing this, where do we want to go? Do we want to stay local? Do we want to, what kind of people do we want to subcontract with? I personally want somebody that's a professional with corporate background, not someone that I really need to train unless I need to train them on a specific application that our customers need, because I don't want to find myself in a position of Zirtual. I think that all of us, if we keep ourselves focused in our area and our expertise, and we understand our business model, then we won't fall into the problem that Zirtual did. But that's what I feel.
That's
So with
excellent.
that, Lisa, you've also done some
May I
research.
just ask a quick question, Annette? How
Yeah,
long was Zirtual in business?
they opened in 2010,
Okay,
so
so
I would say 5 years.
within 5 years that happened.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
Wow. Okay. All right. And Lisa, you were going to share something too, right? I'm sorry to just join you, ladies.
That's okay.
Technology.
Welcome.
Well, as I said before, you may hear toys singing in the background because of my granddaughter playing around my feet. But no, I think you did a great job explaining that, Nanette. And as we did our research, we found some similarities as well as differences with the larger companies. Right now, while she's a little chatty, well, she walked off for just a minute. Maybe she's preoccupied. But I'm like Nanette. I want to work with a close knit team, somebody that a team that I have a relationship with. Some of these larger teams, from what I found in my research, they are hiring all over the United States, and they are, well, not really hiring, they are contracting all over the United States. I know that one in particular, Fancy Hands, gives you very small tasks to start with as a team member, like research or making appointments, travel arrangements, things like that. And they build you up from there. And they're not paying you but as little as $7 an hour for some of these smaller tasks that they're, trying to, I guess, test you and see if you're dependable and if you're going to, be efficient and things like that. But it makes me wonder what kind of a relationship the owner of the company has with these team members. And I just personally like to have a close-knit team, not necessarily a small team, but close-knit in that we have relationships with each other, personally and professionally to a degree. If somebody's having a sickness and death in the family, I need to know about that so I can cover their clients and things like that. So I just, that is my preference, and that's a big difference that I saw. Tammy?
I agree. I think that a big difference. And first of all, I didn't realize until Net, she did wonderful research for us for this show, and she brought to us all those categories, and I had no idea. I just kind of consider, okay, larger versus smaller companies, but there were so many categories within that, and so many, even the larger companies are focused in certain areas, which surprised me because, I didn't realize that. I just thought they were hiring VAs and, so, and I do know that even, especially those that are solopreneurs, do specialize in certain niches and things like that. At least I know your real estate because you were an agent, and so that really fits, as well as some other things that you have people that are specialists in. And so, just as Nanette said, sometimes specializing and keeping it that way helps. But I think also when we think of how we compare to larger companies, I do think there's some things that can set us up for success that we talked about. And some of those things were just keeping it simple. Keep it simple. We don't have to make it a huge big thing. We don't have to, I mean, do a business plan, obviously, do some of the basics of the business, and then start out small. You just only hire one subcontractor in the beginning just to see how you're going to work together, see how it's going to flow, and that kind of thing. And I will tell you from experience, for me at least, it has been difficult at times to get the right people, to be able to make the money that you need to make, plus be able to pay the subcontractor, things like that. Because the company has to make money. You're the one advertising, you're the one drawing people in, and all of that. It's your reputation, all of those things. So I know we talked about the different percentages and things like that before. And I know for me, it's hard because sometimes I want to give them more, but I also know, I have to be able to pay the bills, and so there's certain things that we keep up with, programs, softwares, and all of those things that a subcontractor doesn't necessarily have to do. And so there are people that just subcontract too. They're not necessarily owning their own VA company, but they're a subcontractor, and in that sense, it is their company. And so, we have people that just subcontract, and they enjoy that because they don't have the headache of, making sure they're marketing and doing all of those other things. And I think, just like we were talking about, build slow, because, as we see with Zirtual, 5 years in, and then boom, the crash, And so, and I feel bad for her. I really do. I mean, I feel bad because I know that wasn't, her intent. And for having to lay off that many employees, as well as the stress involved, it was very, very publicized, especially in the VA community. And so I'm sure it's just been a hard recovery, for her and the clients and the subs that were fired, or the employees that were fired, I guess. So I don't know, Nanette, are they going to go to a different model now? Do you know? I know
That's
somebody
not,
bought them.
yeah, somebody bought them, but I don't know if they're going to a different model. I and what that means in terms of the restructuring, how they do things in the future. I'm not quite clear right now. They're just trying to get back their customers and slowly trying to rehire the people that they had on staff. I'm pretty sure not everybody's going to have that opportunity to come back because if somebody else is buying them, then they're going to be monitoring. They're going to have to watch their dollars because there was debt. When this happened, she was hoping to some of the money that she was hoping to raise, she didn't, and that's a killer when you don't have a good cash flow. So if anything, it's really informative, I think, for all of us as we try to build our business. What we would need to be careful of doing. We talk in the past about making sure we manage our time, but also we have to manage our dollars and manage how we run our business. That's really important just as well. You don't want to make sure who you take on, not only that you can do the business, do the satisfy your customers' need, but also you don't want to grow too fast where you're grabbing as many customers as you can and you really can't. You're not managing your business in terms of your how you're spending your money and how your costs. With her, we know what the cost was: the payroll cost, health insurance, whatever, the training, whatever. That's expensive. And to me, she ran away from the model of what a VA is all about, and so she kind of lost. To me, it sounds like she lost sight. I think when you're in this virtual world, we're all learning this. It's new, basically, but it's kind of like taking off. And I've been in the technology world all my life, and I suffered through the first technology bubble burst of the internet, and everybody has this great idea and everybody wants to put money into it, but nobody thinks about the process of building a business, and then it all crashes down. And that happens a lot in Silicon Valley, which is where she is. That money's flowing all the time. Everyone has a great idea. Oh, fund me. It's like Shark Tank over there. But it doesn't but they're not being smart about it. And I see the same problems from the first technology burst of 2000, where I lost my job, and I see that mistakes, and it stays with me. So as I'm building this business, I'm thinking slow. I want to keep it slow. I want to keep it local and branch out slowly. That's what we all should do. But also, it's a teaching moment for all of us in terms of how we hire someone. How do we delegate? What are we looking for in our subcontractors? What they should have, and how much training do we need to do? I mean, that all, that's our time, and that's a cost too, in terms of our time, as we run our business. So that's something to think about.
Those are great points because, and I think too, especially the credit issue, because as new and young companies, we have to be very careful with that. It's real easy. I get these emails and calls all the time about you can have 50,000, 100,000, small business loan and this, and we'll fund you and blah blah blah. And it's it would be easy to say sure, but I can't even imagine what the interest rate would be, first of all, and second of all, if I can't pay for it, I shouldn't be doing it. If I need to always keep in mind when I'm bringing on a client as well. Is this going to be mutually beneficial for the client and I, as well as the subcontractor that I'm going to, put on that task perhaps. Now, for me, I tend to work with the client first. I want to get a good handle for the project management part of it. And honestly, a lot of times, I don't know if you guys talked about this, but a lot of times the owner is the project manager initially and for quite a while until we get to the point where we can maybe put that on somebody else. But if we're not, then that's another expense we have to put out. And in it, like you said, it's still an expense of time that we're doing. But this way, if I take on a new client and I initially have that interaction with them and I kind of work slowly with them to see what they need and what that's going to be, and then I can hand some tasks off or the whole client. It just depends on what it's going to be, if it's just one project or if it's multiple ongoing projects. But so I think you have to really monitor that, because it would be real easy to get uninvolved, as you bring on more and more clients, because it's hard to manage all of that and to, hand the tasks off and to really be sure they're doing the job that your name says it does, because one bad client is a huge thing for us and reviews and stuff out there, because it can really affect us. So, and especially as we're starting, when now I know that Lisa and I are a few years further in, but especially in the beginning, that's a huge thing, and you don't want to have, anybody can get on now and put a bad review, and you often can't get it down. So just be mindful of that the people you bring on as subcontractors represent you. Would you want them representing you to the client? And so I think that's just really important. Also, I thought that, as you guys talked, I think, the great fit is huge, making sure a client fits with our business. But also, when we were talking about hiring employees versus subcontractors and all of that, I actually am learning more about HR lately, just simply because even in hiring subcontractors, it's powerful, and it's good to know that, because nobody talks about that issue in anything that I've ever seen with VA work, because we're subcontracting. So why do you need HR? But the reality is the HR things really do help us to subcontract, because if we look out for those items, we're still going to be hiring or bringing on good subcontractors. And then if at some point we feel we need to hire an employee, which that may come, we may have a right-hand person that, we want to make an employee if we're at a certain level. I'm not there. But if we do, somebody told me who works in worked in HR, was an executive for years, that their philosophy always was in bringing on an employee that their salary should be able to bring in 5 times, like for their salary, that person should be able to bring in 5 times their salary in revenue for the company. So I thought that was really interesting, a very good statistic, because if you think of it that way, that's a huge thing. And if you don't think they're going to generate that for your company, if it's only going to be double or 3 times, maybe you need to rethink it and keep them as a subcontractor. Because you have to take on the cost of all those benefits, like Minette, you were talking about the health insurance, the sick days, vacation, and now health insurance is such a big issue. There's so many legal issues around it now too, that we all have to be careful of that, and then even just the subcontracting versus employee, that's a big thing too. Did you guys want to add anything in there? Talk more about that?
I wanted to say right quick, Tammy, you had a good point when we were collaborating about today's broadcast, that we don't have to take on every client that approaches us or contacts us. And if you would expand on that a little bit.
Yes, I think that's a hard lesson, and especially for our new, VAs and new multi-VA companies. Our tendency is when anybody contacts us and wants to be a client, we're like, yes, yes, because we want to grow, But so often, and I've learned this the hard way. It's not an easy thing. I have learned it the hard way. So, and I had a client for a long time, was very demanding, almost abusive in it, and I just continued thinking, okay, it'll get better, and it didn't. It just kept getting worse, to the point of where he wanted to hire me as an employee, and I said, no, I'm a business, and I love working in my business. And so I think we just have to be careful. If there's something in you that's saying, I'm not sure about this, so maybe we need to just pull back a little bit and say, um, you know, that I don't have any spots right now, but if you'll give me, a week or something, then you could think about it, or even write an email and say, I'm sorry, it's just not going to work at this time. Now, I have not had to do that, but I have had to fire, I guess you would say, clients, as we say in the VA business. But so anyway, and that's harder. It's much easier on the front end, I think, to say, I don't think this is going to work, or I don't have any availability, than to work for months and months, put all that time and effort in, and then to say this isn't working. So I just think it's easier to do it on the front end. Melissa Martinez asked a question. She said, please speak about the importance of paying subcontractors in a timely manner, if not up front. They have bills and things to pay too. And that's a great point, because I will tell you, in my contract with my subcontractors, I do put in there that they're paid after I'm paid. And I know that's hard sometimes, but I do bill twice monthly, except for special cases. So if I bill twice monthly and I have a good paying client, they're going to get paid on a pretty timely manner. And usually it works out fine. And if they're set up with PayPal and everything, they can, it's much easier now than it used to be, waiting on mail and everything else. But yes, I think each VA company is different in how they do that, possibly. But I know for me, that's how I have handled it in the past. And if I actually had the money, sometimes I would go ahead. But I also have gotten stung by that, and not, and put myself in a bad situation with paying my own bills too. So I think it's much wiser, if you can, to have that understanding with the subcontractor, that when you get paid, they will be paid. And it's hard, but I think that, at least for me, that's worked so far. I don't have the cash flow that I can do that out front most of the time.
Yeah, I don't feel comfortable doing something up front, but I would definitely make sure that they're paid right after I'm paid at the same time, and I would, I think asking for what, a percentage up front from the customer for the work that you're going to do, not only assures that they're serious about doing the work with you, but that money can be put aside so that I can pay my subcontractor on a timely basis. So that so yeah, you definitely want to work with the person whoever it is that you're working with, have that agreement up front of when you're going to get paid, it's to my benefit to make sure I stick with that because, and I'm sure Lisa can talk about paying her subcontractors in a timely manner because you don't want to ruin your reputation. If you're trying to build a multi-VA business, you're not going to stick the people that you're asking to work with you. That's not good
And
business practice.
exactly, I value my subcontractors so much that even I have had a case where I didn't get paid for it and I still paid her and it took a little longer, but I did because I didn't think it was fair that she didn't get paid. But it's hard. It's really hard, but I really do value my subcontractors and I want to be sure they're paid. Lisa, how does it work for you?
I have in my subcontractor agreement. Well, my subcontractors get two. One time the non-compete, or what am I thinking of, Tammy? The
I'm non-compete, and then you do also one other item, don't you, Lisa?
I'm drawing a blank right now, but at any rate, so
I know.
one contract where they have the confidentiality agreement and non-circumvention. That's what it is, not non-compete. That's for employees, the non-circumvention. And then when we obtain a client and the team member is picked for that client, then they get a contract that maps out everything they're going to be doing, for how long they're going to be doing it, and what they're going to get paid for it. And I pay my subcontractors when I get paid, which is up front. But I do have a part of their contract says that if they are unable to complete the terms of this contract, that they are to repay any unused funds from the work within 5 days. And I've had one situation where a client was working with a team member and had to back out before the contract ended. And it's not that the team member didn't get paid because she got paid up front. It's not that she did the work and didn't get paid for the work she had done because she got paid up front. But she had plans for that income, and she wasn't able to fulfill those plans. It was a vacation for her family for the weekend, and she wasn't able to fulfill those plans because the client backed out. And of course, I didn't have to worry about paying her because it wasn't any work that she had done that she did not get paid for. But I had to go back and rewrite my contract and put in an early termination fee, a substantial early termination fee. So as a deterrent that they fulfill the terms of that contract to the end, and then if they did have to pay it, which I've only had 2 clients in 4 years pay that early termination fee, then if there is something I need to compensate the team member for, then I use that for that.
You bring up a great point about that early termination and just in learning, because I think we all, as VAs and in different circumstances that we face every day with our clients, we do learn in the process, and usually it's through a hard circumstance. So like you said, that early termination is great. I wouldn't have, I'm going to go in and do that in mine probably now because I hadn't thought about that either. And I did, recently, I think we had talked about the last time we were on too, about having packages and things like that. So I recently started that and have some clients on that, which I'm very excited about. And that is paid up front. And so then I have to work out, okay, so how am I paying the subcontractor and all of those things in that event as well. And so I think the fact, Lisa, that you have all that worked into yours. Now, like I said, mine was worked in that they get paid when I get paid. So now if I have a package and they're going to work on that, I have to pay, like you were speaking of. So, yeah, so that's really great that you bring up those things. Now, Beth had a question too. She wants to know if a client requests something I'm not familiar with, and I know a friend or a VA who's an expert at that particular request, I'm a little unsure of the referral process. The one thing I will just say up front, and then you guys can jump in too, please, every VA works differently in this. I've referred people and just done it because, just to do it. And actually, it's a local person, and her and I do that on and off, because she's great at transcription. I don't do transcription, but she doesn't do the general VA work. So we'll just refer back and forth without any kind of referral fee. Others, however, do referral fees. Some people say, okay, 10% for a certain time period or for the first contract or things like that. It just depends. Everybody's different. But if you guys want to jump in and tell me if you do anything in this area either. Nanette, do you have anything to add to that you might do?
I think if somebody requests something I'm not familiar with, it really depends on my scope of network. I may, depending on the job and the scope of networks that I know, I may say that I may take the job and subcontract somebody that has the better skill at it. Or if it's something that I don't think the people that I know, it's just beyond them or they don't have the time, then I would do a referral. So I have a list. I try to keep a list of people that other VAs that I know are very good at something that I would want to have a working relationship with as subcontracting for me, and then I have a list of people I know and their skill levels that I can refer my clients to. So it really depends on my workload. If I want to keep the job, but outsource it to a subcontractor that I know, that all depends. So that's how I assess it.
Yeah, and that's a great point too, because often we can keep it as a contract ourselves. Once we know what the other person is going to charge, then we'll have to put our rate on it a little bit to bump it up for the work, because we are going to have to do some work, with it. We've talked to the client, we've gathered them and all that. And Lisa, I'm glad you're back, because I know that you not only do real estate, but now you have lawyers and other things. So that might not be your specialty. But as Beth asked the question, do you actually refer it out, or do you bring the client on and then find somebody with that specialty?
So far, I have been able to keep it, quote unquote, in-house with my team members. Not only do they specialize in things like paralegal or website design, but I encourage them to give me a list of their strongest skill sets or their ideal client. Of course, my paralegal would ideally like to work with attorneys, but she has told me that if we don't have any attorneys for her to work with, she's happy with doing some light data entry or, spreadsheets, things like that. All of them have their specialty skills, but they also have general skills. And so far I've been able to find a fit within the team that works well with the clients. I've not had to refer anybody out so far.
That's great. And I knew you were a perfect example of that. So because I know you have a lot of different niches that you take care of and different clients that you take care of. So that's really a great example. So Beth, I know you, and I know you work full time, so maybe that's not something you want to do and take on right now as you're building your own VA business. But and you may want to start a referral fee if you're starting to get some of those kind of things, because at least then it's some of an income for the work you've done in attracting that client. So that's really up to you and up to the person that you're referring to as well. So I'm sure you guys hopefully can work that out. If you guys have any more questions, please let us know. One of the other things we really wanted to talk about today too was the difference between employee and subcontractor. And I'm just going to put out there kind of a disclaimer because, we're going to give some points, and some of the things that I'm going to say are from the IRS site directly. But also just keep in mind, you may want to contact a lawyer or the IRS or someone else, because we're not going to be liable for just giving this information out and that's all you do. You do need to do some research, on your own in regard to that. But when I looked at this, and I know when I first started bringing on subcontractors and stuff for work, my lawyer was very careful to explain to me to be careful because it's a fine line sometimes with this. And the IRS does speak at 3 areas that you have to meet for to be a subcontractor, or just to see, is it a subcontractor or is it an employee? And the 3 areas that they talk about are the behavioral control, the financial control, and the relationship of the parties. So in other words, the behavior, do you train them? And then that we were talking about that. Do you train them? Now, if you have to train them, they may be an employee. So, in other words, when you get a contractor into your home to do plumbing, you don't have to teach him how to do the plumbing, or you would do it yourself, I'm sure. But he already knows, and he comes with the tools, and he does everything he needs to do. You don't need to teach him. So the same should hold true with VAs. When you hire a subcontractor, they should have the skills and the skill set to do the work. Now, if there's specific software that your client uses, there may have to be just some training on that. And that's okay usually. But, just make sure that you meet all the criteria, because if you are training them and then there's some of these other things as well, you may have to look at whether it's an employee or a contractor. The other thing is the financial control. That's about what aspects of their economic work do you do. So in other words, if the worker has to bring their own equipment to the job and things like that, so they have their own computer, you're not supplying that. They have their own paper, pen, all of those items, you're not supplying that. Software, Now, if you're supplying everything, you need to reconsider that as well, because if the IRS comes in and says, okay, let's look at the situation, if they could rightly say that it was an employee versus subcontractor. And then the other thing was the relationship of the parties. And I'm really not going into depth here. So there really are some things online that would help you with all of this as well. And I would suggest looking at that just to be sure. But the relationship of the parties looks at, how does the business and the worker view the relationship? So do you provide benefits at all? Do you provide vacation, sick days, health insurance, pensions, those items? If you provide any of that, obviously that's an employee, it's not a subcontractor. But one note about this that was noted was many people are considered employees but don't receive benefits either. So keep that in mind. And then, do you have a contract with this person that is specifying they are a subcontractor? That's very important. Make sure you have a contract specifying that, because then they've signed it and they understand that they are a subcontractor. So there's no miscommunication between both of you. Anybody want to add anything to that? That was just a really quick overview of that.
I would say that the next really important part that I see happens a lot when I look at some of the VA sites, customers are looking for a VA. They will say give time frames of when they want people to work, pretty strict ones. And when you're a VA, you can't really when you're a contractor or a freelancer, you can't really demand somebody to do a specific time. And I know it does say that in the IRS site too. I did check that. And when you start logging people into a certain time and they don't have the freedom to come and decide when they're going to do that work, then that could be a violation of a freelancer. So you be careful about that. I mean, yes, you do have a job where there's certain time periods that someone needs your help, but that's an agreement that you make. But when you, like somebody that worked for Zirtual mentioned, that I like working there, I get trained, but you're chained to your desk. You're not a freelancer anymore. If you can't come and go to the store, come back, finish your job, and you're kind of tied to a certain, then you're an employee. So
it's interesting you bring that up though too, because a lot of VAs answer phone lines too, and that can be a range of time, and sometimes you can do it on the go for some. It just depends. And so, yeah, I think it's tricky. And I think if anybody has any doubt or concern over which it is, they certainly should get either a lawyer or the IRS and ask their opinion on which it is.
Right.
So that's a great point. And then there's also a way you can know for sure. On the IRS site, it talks about they can file a form. It's called SSB or SS8. I'm sorry, my eyes. And you can complete it and then turn that in, and they will do two tests that are called consistency test, which requires that you have given 1099 consistently to all of your contracted employees, and then the reasonable basis test, which says that you must have treated the worker as a subcontractor because you reasonably relied on a few things, that you relied on the treatment of the worker as a subcontractor because there's a court case that says you can, because of an IRS audit, or because of a long-standing practice in the industry. And I would say this is where we have definitely that long-standing practice in the industry. However, as it is changing all the time, just like we have so many out there now, and like what Zirtual did, that's an employee, made them employees. We'll have to be careful and really watch and make sure that we're still in the right, frame, and we're still doing the subcontracting the correct way. Because just as we saw with Zirtual, once you step over that line, you're talking about a huge jump. And unless your clients are going to begin to pay a whole lot more to cover their, those employees' health insurance benefits and everything else, it doesn't pay to go that way. Your company will go into debt and other things just to pay those things. So just keep it in mind. Make sure you're in line with the IRS, and you should be fine. And I will say too, sometimes my subcontractors are just hired for a task or for a limited time. I'd love to keep them all the time. I know, Lisa, yours are more full time, where I've just had more task related, and some who are kind of part time that are with me, that we do something on a regular basis. But I wouldn't say that any of them are considered full time at this point for me. Are yours, Lisa?
I agree, and I would like to, for the last few minutes that we have, we've got like 15 minutes left. How can we, as smaller VA teams or VAs with one or two others in a relationship, to where if they need, like you, a transcription done, you can depend on that other VA to take care of that. How do we compete with these larger companies, even those that have just subcontractors, but they do a lot of advertising, and they're starting to look big box? How do we compete with them?
I agree, Lisa. I think that's and that was part of the reason for our HOA today. And I know that Nanette talked about some of these things, but definitely I think that we are much more personal. We can customize our services. Some of us do that. Some just have strict services they supply. But we have, personal interaction with the client. And at some of those other places, they click buttons, get what they need, and it's done, and then it's assigned to somebody, and they don't really get that personal interaction. What are some other things, Nanette, that you noticed when looking at this?
When I was researching these sites, what I found interesting was that there was this one journalist from Inc. magazine that used, I think, Fancy Hands or one of the others, and had some comments to make about the kind of customer service that he was getting from them. And I found it interesting because they would say, well, somebody didn't really have a vested interest in what I was doing because and then because they had other clients. And not that having other clients is really bad, because we all have other clients, but they felt like it was more like a package, big, like you said, a big box place where they had some other people to jump in, but that feeling that that they didn't get the feeling that that person had a vested interest in their company as if it was their own. I think for me, whatever company I take on, and I think that's a competitive edge, is that I really pay attention to knowing that company. I'm always thinking outside the box. I'm giving a consultative view of what I think works for that company. And so when I'm helping them build a website, I'm thinking about the branding that comes in. I'm thinking about their customers and who, what is the best social media sites for them. So I'm thinking all the way around. If this was my company, how would I, what would I want to do? What works best? So I'm doing that little bit of research and adding that plus to the customers that I have. And I don't think you really get that from the big companies. Yeah, they can do, tasks for you and social media management, but are they really thinking, I think they're thinking more about how, those the tasks and administrative things that I could provide, but are they really thinking in a consultative way? I think as a small company, we can do that. We do that, and that's a big competitive edge. That's one.
I agree. I think that's absolutely huge because, just as you said, too often it isn't that vested interest. Like for my employees, I really get involved in their success. I want them to succeed. I mean, it helps both of us, obviously, and I just really get involved with my clients on that personal level to let them know that I really do care about their business and I am taking the time with it. It's not just plugging in something, getting that website, or getting the services that they need, the social media and all of those other things. I'm like you, I think of that branding. You're really great with that, Nanette. And I think of all of those items, not just the one piece they've given me, but I think of, okay, well, you really kind of need this, this, and this. And whether they do it themselves or I do it, I'm still doing like the consultant part of that to let them know what they need. I don't want them to fall flat. I want them to succeed, and I really take time with them.
And the other thing too is that I think is a competitive edge is that, because I don't know how we talked about this before in the past, how we skim off when we have a subcontractor, when we have a pricing that we give our customers. If they're going to do most of the work, and I think Lisa does this too, they get a certain percentage. I think that's our percentage of when you're working with a subcontractor. I always want to make sure that they're getting, if they're going to do most of the work and I'm just a project manager, they're going to get most of the pay because that's what they do. And these bigger companies can't do that. Now their overhead is so big, they're so large, and they have so much debt and pay, that they have just to run their company, that they can't give subcontractors much money, so they're getting paid $10 an hour, $11, and $15 an hour. And I really didn't get in this business to get paid that little because I'm here to provide my expertise, but I'm also here to build a business. And so I think that the one good thing I would say about these big companies is that if you're a first-time freelancer trying to become a virtual assistant, trying to get an understanding of it, these companies are probably great for you to work with, but don't expect to get paid a lot, but you will learn a lot. But if you're where we are, where we're trying to run a business and trying to add subcontractors, be a multi-VA company, then our subcontractors are going to be paid well, but we also expect them to have the professional background and the ability to think outside the box, for us. So I think that, what we offer, and unfortunately there isn't an avenue where these small businesses can see us. I think you said, how do we compete? And I definitely think getting the marketing out there, that there's tiers of VA multi-VA companies. There are different tiers. There's small, ones like ourselves that give, I think, more quality and attention to our customers, and then there's the big guys, who want to do global and get out there, and so it'll be nice if there was a way of a grid, that we could promote out there to small businesses so that they know they have all their choices besides the big ones, or the ones like Fiverr or Upwork, or Elance, where it's a free for all. That's how I see them.
And I think
I'm sorry. That's exactly right. I like your take on that, Nanette. And maybe, we should look at our marketing venues like our websites and things like that on social media and make sure that we are getting across that we give the quality attention that they need. I have more clients than not say, I need somebody that thinks outside of the box. That's not just going to take care of what I need, but that can collaborate with me on how I can grow, how I can improve. So if we, really put that across, as these larger companies they're becoming more and more and bigger, that to let the business owners know they do have a choice.
I think you're absolutely right. And one of the things I was going to say in these last few minutes is I think as far as the marketing goes, because it is difficult for us to have the cash flow to do the big marketing and, all of those things. But sometimes we can get little chunks of marketing here and there. Like recently, there was the Women Partnership Guinness World Book of Records thing, and you could do a freebie or something for that. And so somebody, they're going to get to see that name out there because, and maybe they'll gain a client or two from it. You just never know, and like there were sponsorships, things like that were way under $100. And so even just taking the time to put it in, and you would get in front of 600 real estate people and bookkeeper or CPAs and all kinds of people. And so who knows where you're going to get that from. But I would say for the most part, for me anyway, I can't speak with you all, but for me, I have gotten most of the clients are either referral or they have been from social media. Now, I just recently joined a networking group that I really like, and I have already received a client from there as well. So networking is huge, it really is, and that's where you're going to also pull in a lot of clients. So I think you have to be active on social media. You can't ignore it. I think you have to keep your website updated on a regular basis and be making changes even weekly sometimes to be able to, get that SEO that you need and everything, as well as the blogs and the social media. And you can't just post, you have to interact.
Right.
And that's where you're going to have to really get it. Go ahead.
And also, sites like I just mentioned, like that journalist who wrote about these large companies, answering, they have comments in the bottom. And that's, I realize I'm not doing this, but I'm throwing it out there because I'm realizing what I like. These are missed opportunities to talk to people, so when you see an article on all these in Inc. magazine or, an entrepreneur and somebody's talking about one of these big box, VA companies, that's the opportunity to make a comment. Did you not know, there's another, level of small, multi VA companies that have good, good professional people working there, and that, so that people are aware, and even the people who are writing about these companies can see it and do something. So it's really getting out there. You're not only researching and marketing yourself and posting, but also reading what's going on, what's being said, and then commenting.
Does anybody
putting good content? Putting good content out there is what you're talking about. Yeah. And I think that is huge as well. Go ahead, Lisa.
No, I was going to say, does anyone have any questions as to what we talked about? Because we're winding down for this month's broadcast. So if you have a question, go ahead and shoot it out there. And if you want to put one on our VA to VA Facebook page or Google Plus page, you're welcome to do that, and we will answer them as well.
Mm-hmm. Keisha brings up a good point, and this was something that when Nanette was talking about, I was thinking about. But anticipating their needs, I tend to do that with clients, and they usually love it that I'm anticipating their needs before they even ask for it. And so I think that's where we are very different from the bigger companies, because we can do that with our clients, and those who want the more custom, personal services need to come to the smaller companies like ours. Any last comments?
No, I think we did a good job. It was a very good one.
Please still post questions because we check it. And we have a Facebook page now, so get over there and join us on there too. I would love to see you all hang out with us on there as well. Lisa, Nanette?
No, I think it was very enlightening. I love doing this program because I learned a lot about my competition. I hope we all got that out there to our audience about what's out there, and don't be afraid to. One thing I would suggest you do is, if you want to know about companies, there's a great site called Glassdoor. If you type in Fancy Hands or Zirtual, you'll get a ton of information and reviews by people who work there and have used them. And that gives you an idea of what people are saying and what they think. That's only good for yourself, as you build your multi-VA business, and what you want to watch out for and what you want to do that's different.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. We will be back next month, and please do go to our VA Facebook page and Google Plus page. If you have any ideas of topics that you'd like for us to discuss in the coming months, please put them in there, and we will definitely consider them. And if you'd like to be a guest on one of our broadcasts, so we can pick your brain about how to work with teams, then, let us know that as well. Contact any one of the three of us.
Okay.
Thank you,
Thanks.
everybody. Have a great day.
Have a great day.
Bye.
Bye.